Hi everyone, thank you so much for taking the time to join us live for today's Customer Success Workshop with Paul Phillip, the founder and CEO at Amity. My name is Mathilde, and I'm the Manager of Marketing here at Amity, where we provide customer success managers with a platform that they need to retain and grow their customers at scale. We're super excited to be tackling such a great topic today. We're discussing how CSMs can manage renewals with playbooks, and more specifically, we'll be actually working with you guys to show you how to go about building and updating that playbook for your organization. So Paul Phillip is the founder and CEO at Amity, as I mentioned. He's a leader, innovator in SaaS and customer success, and since founding Amity, he's spoken with customer success professionals from all industries and organizations, and he's acquired a huge wealth of knowledge about best practices, which he shares with our customers on a daily basis, and today he'll be sharing with you guys. So before we get started, a couple of housekeeping notes. Join us on Twitter. We'll be sharing screenshots and retweeting all of you guys using the hashtag CS Workshop. And don't hesitate to tag us at GetAmity and at pphillip. And if you see a slide you like, take a screenshot, share it. We'd love to engage with you guys on social. We will be sending the recording and the slides to everyone before the weekend, so keep an eye on your inbox. You'll get a note from me. If you don't see that showing up within the next couple of days, do check your junk folder or just send me a note, and I'd be super happy to send you the direct link as well. And we do have a Q&A planned for the end of the webinar, so at any point during the webinar, open the Q&A section in your Zoom control panel and send us your question. We'll keep it for the end. And there is also a chat section if you'd like to engage with other attendees at any point. And that's it for me. So Paul, thank you so much for joining us today. They're all yours.
Okay. Thanks, Mathilde. Thanks for everybody for coming out during your lunch hour or almost lunch hour. It's great to be speaking with you again. We love these very practical webinars because it gives us a chance to really talk about the how-to and the what-to-do part of the customer success journey. So these workshops are meant to be practical. They're meant to be really focused on your needs. We talk a little bit about our product and our company near the end, but that's not the point. The point is that you walk away today feeling like you've got more control in your renewal process and have practical actions to take. So the more interactive we can have this workshop today, the more value you will get and the more fun we will have. And because I can talk for about 3 hours about this, so if you've got 3 hours, drop me an email and we'll have that long conversation. But I really want to focus on your challenges. So before we dive in, take a second and write 1 or 2 words into your chat widget in Zoom about your experience with your renewals process. What are your challenges? And just 1 or 2 words, not a paragraph. And we'll give you 30 seconds to write those in. But just tell us what your life is like during renewal. It's a happy time. That would be 1 word. Proactive. That would be another word. Chaotic. Ad hoc, manual, confusing, that would be another word.
We're getting lots of awesome answers right here. One of the first ones from Andrew was timing. Another one that's coming up a lot is proactive, and people mentioning their processes are more reactive than they are proactive. Another one here is proving value. Another one that's coming up a lot right now is our challenges are managing renewals at scale, and in this case in particular, 10 of thousands of customers at once, so that must be really challenging. Consistency and visibility of process. The balance between proactive and reactive is really coming up a lot, as well as just an undefined process and unpredictable, which I think we'll be touching on. Yeah, we're getting a lot of, thank you so much everyone for all the awesome answers. Demonstrating a competitive advantage is also
great.
Coming up. Some people are mentioning upsells, but the major thing is reactive, manual, and yeah, lots of really great answers here.
Great.
Really, really great.
So, so the key ones that I took away are reactive, proving value, consistency at scale, and manual, and related to proving value is demonstrating competitive advantage. Why our product over their product? Awesome. Thanks everyone for participating. That really helps me focus in on what's important for you. If you've been on one of these webinars before, you're about to get the your mileage will vary discussion. Everybody on this webinar is in a different business. You'll have a different business model. You'll be at a different stage in your development. And I'm sure that we'll have people here today whose business model is freemium and spread throughout the organization, land and expand. And then we'll have moderate touch to high touch to very high touch business models in here. We'll have two-sided marketplaces. We'll have everything in here. So there is no magic playbook that's going to cover the renewals process for all of those business models. So we're gonna talk about more of a framework than a specific playbook, and then we'll talk through how you can adjust that framework to fit into your particular business. Okay, so what is a playbook in the first place? So simple word, if you want to walk away with one word, is a playbook is your recipe for doing renewals. And it's just a set of rules that you follow. And a playbook is the primary mechanism that you use to give yourself back control, because it lets you standardize the process. It lets you get everyone doing the same step at the same time, at the same place in the process. So, it's a great way of giving yourself more structure and more control. Okay. And so for the individual CSM practitioner, having a playbook lets you do the renewal process more accurately. When I'm doing something that I do every day, and if I don't have a playbook, I start doing it differently on different days, and I forget what I did the day before, and I make stuff up. Man, do I make stuff up, and man, do I forget steps. Everyone who works with me knows that I forget steps and that they catch those forgotten steps. With an ad hoc, not written down, not standardized playbook, it gets a little hectic. And you never know how well you're doing. And at the team level, it lets you measure the performance of the team. It lets you measure the performance of the playbook. Hey, is this a good playbook? Is this a lousy playbook? How can we make this playbook better? Do we want to not do anything? And it lets you identify, what's working, what's not working, and what's being productive and what's not being productive. Okay, so just a quick point about renewals, because there will be so many different business models represented on this call. You can think of, there's two models for renewals. So one is you have a contract. And if you have a contract, then that contract will have an expiry date. And after that expiry date, you'll need a new contract with that customer. And the other model is that you may have a contract, you may not have a contract, but they're paying month to month, and they have the option of churning at any time they like. And renewal is more about keeping them engaged, keeping them participating, keeping them active, keeping them getting value out of your product. Okay, so in these two different models, it's just you'll keep you'll keep the customers who are currently under contract out of your retention and churn calculations. They're just in adoption or mastery, whereas everybody is a potential for churn or potential for retention in the month-to-month relationship. So the many flavors of those two different things. I'm sure that everyone here is somewhere on a spectrum between the two. Also, when you think about the renewal process, there's three different models for the renewal process. And I'm sure there's all sorts of different hybrids of these. But the first model is that the CSM is accountable and does the renewal by themselves. And the second model is where the CSM basically briefs the account manager or salesperson or the renewal manager, and the renewal manager navigates the entire renewal process with the input from the customer success manager. And then the third model is that the CSM and the account manager work as a tag team together. And largely the biggest variable in the renewal process is how much work does it take to renew the contract. And so if it's $1 million a month relationship, then it's going to be a lot of work to renew that contract, and it's going to go through your customer's legal organization. It's going to go through the procurement organization. It's going to go through the COO or the CEO or the CFO. And it's just getting the contract moving through all those stages is a big job. And so that's definitely not how the CSMs like spending their time. It's not a productive use of their time. They generally don't have that experience or the aptitude or interest in doing that. And that's usually where the account manager comes in, is to navigate the contract process at the customer. And so the CSM's role generally is CSMs in the renewal process take care of making sure that the customer is getting value, that the customer is being satisfied, that there's nothing falling through the cracks, and where there are things falling through the cracks, identifying them so that we don't get surprised with them later on, and leaving purchasing, legal, executive buy-in, those type of activities to different people. Okay, so take a second and identify where your model is there. Okay, so let's talk about what might go into a playbook for the renewal process. And again, if you haven't been on one of our workshop webinars before, the way that we recommend you think about a playbook is that you design it backwards. So you design it from the outcome that you want to achieve, and then go backwards from that to see what the playbook needs to be. And the reason for that is that generally ends up with a simpler, more focused playbook, because it's usually pretty easy to see all of the steps that you need to do with the at the beginning, and it gets harder to really guess about the steps that you have to do at the end. And so, let's do the design work where the work is the hardest first. And that again, a simpler playbook, more focused, more effective playbook. Okay, so the end goal that we want in this example is we want to get a renewal. Getting a renewal here is going to mean executing a new agreement. And now, in your business, that may be a huge effort, maybe take 6 months, and or it may be a relatively trivial effort and may just take a couple of days. But map your model onto this playbook. Okay, so what do we have to do right before we get a renewal? What had to happen before that renewal, before that contract got accepted, is that we reviewed the agreement with the customer and they bought in. I don't know about you, but I don't have a lot of experience where I send a contract to somebody and they sign it. They often will review it and give us red lines, and there can be that whole process. So now, again, this may be 6 executives from their business reviewing the contract with you, or it might be a mid-level manager, one person reading it for half an hour. But the customer is going to have to review the agreement, and the agreement may be just a proposal, or it may be a 300-page contract. Okay, so then you need to prepare the agreement, and again, as in the previous step, by agreement, it can be contract, it can be proposal, it can be a design. It's whatever you need to do to capture the nature of the relationship you have with that customer. So often this will be a proposal or a letter of intent, something simple. But what you want to do in here, when you're preparing the new agreement, is you want to demonstrate in the agreement what the value the customer is going to get out of the renewal. And so contract negotiations, getting agreements can really get bogged down in, length of term, payment terms, currency exchange, all of the issues that come up in a contract negotiation. So you want to be very clear about what value is the customer going to get from this relationship, and you want that to be upfront and center, and you want to always keep that in the front of the customer's mind. Otherwise, everyone forgets why they're playing this game. And so we recommend having a page, a section, an appendix that is dedicated to, what's the customer's problem, what's their life look like when they're using your solution, what are the particular benefits, what are the particular economic outcomes that they're going to get in this relationship. So it's really good to make that explicit and clear. So a lot of work goes into that stage. Okay, so before you did that, you had a review with your customer, and this can be a normal quarterly business review. This can be an annual renewal review. This can just be a basic touch point with the customer. But you want to sit down and you want to ask, how's it going? You want to review the value section from your previous agreement. How did we do? Did we deliver this value? Did we deliver this value? Did you get that result? Did you get that outcome? And what next? How are you going to get more value from the product in your organization next year than you did this year? And that's the flavor that you want the customer review to take, is you want to focus on value. You want to focus on increasing the value. And now you'll get feature requests, you'll get implementation requests, you'll get data requests, and all of those are important and valid. But those aren't going to get the job done. So you want to capture those, you want to acknowledge those, but you don't want to get lost in those, so that you and the customer lose sight of the real value and the real purpose, the real outcome for this relationship. And then before that customer review, you want to send them a notice. You want to be explicit. You want to say the contract is expiring, or it's time for us to look at the next year in our relationship, or the next 3 years in our relationship. And you want to do that, depending on your business, 30 days, 2 weeks before, and 90 days before. At Amity, we like to do this 30 to 60 days ahead of the renewal. But we know businesses that do it 6 months before. We know businesses that do it 2 weeks before. But again, you want to cover the logistics in that notice. Very likely it's an email, might be a phone call. So you want to cover, dates, length of the agreement, but you also want to start building the value and the outcome part of the discussion that you're going to have. So this is more than, hey, your contract's up in 2 weeks. Let's schedule a call to renew it. You want to remind them of what their goals were for the last contract period, and you want to encourage them to imagine where the usage and the value that they get from the product can go over the next year. So you want to start engaging them in, in seeing the value and seeing the why they want to keep working with you right from the beginning, right from that outreach. Okay, and then before you start that whole process, we're using 90 days in the template playbook. But again, 2 weeks, 6 months, 2 months, this will depend on your business. You want to sit down and explicitly review the status of that customer internally. So you want, what were their goals? How did we do? What's their health like? What's their usage like? What's the engagement like? What's their attitude? Is there any emotion in the relationship? Is there anything that we promised that we didn't deliver on? Is there anything that we over-delivered on? Is there anything that we surprised and delighted them with? All of these are really going to be important facts that you want to master when you're going through the process. And you want your playbook to really prompt you through all of that. So, so whatever that list is for you, you want your playbook to remind you and lead you through thinking that through. So what is the value? What were the goals? What did we drop? How did we surprise and delight them? What's the temperature or what's the mood of the relationship? Those are the types of questions or reminders that you want to put into your playbook. Okay. So now we have a template playbook where you start internally dedicating, scheduling as part of your playbook an hour to do an internal review, a day to do an internal review, and then using that to feed into the notice that you give them, and setting up a review with the customer. Again, using the internal review notes or learnings to feed that customer review, and using the customer review to focus on the value that's coming in the next period of time, working with the customer to put the new agreement together, and really emphasizing the value and the outcome that you need in the relationship, and then obviously, reviewing the agreement with the customer, and if the negotiations are getting tough, it's good to have the value and the outcomes, in a separate area in the agreement, so you can return people to why we're doing this. And then the easiest and the most fun part is getting the signatures. Okay, so I see that we're getting a lot of questions. Did you want to, Matilda, did you want to ask some of the questions we're getting?
Sure. So we do have one question that's coming back a lot, which is how would that process change for customers that are on auto-renew or an auto-renewal subscription?
Right. So auto-renewal takes care of the last 3 steps. You don't need to go through those last 3 steps. But just because you don't have to go through those last 3 steps, don't assume that the customer is happy and getting value and achieving the outcomes. And so you may want to replace the agreement with a promise, or your goals for the relationship for the next period of time. But the downside of auto renewal is you miss that opportunity to reset expectations, get people focused on the value again, and to get a new trajectory for a higher level of value, or better, or higher outcome levels.
Awesome. And building on top of this question, another one here is, do you have any recommendations for taking this and doing that at scale? So if you have thousands of customers, it can be hard to have a customer, like a CSM, review all of the customers. So what do you recommend for this?
Well, in that case, a product like Amity can be really helpful, because Amity will can make doing that review almost instantaneous. You can make it easy to print off an internal report about the customer. There's Amity, and there's other platforms, but automation, however you do it, is really critical. And having a customer data warehouse where all of your metrics and all of the results and all of your promises and tasks are stored is really critical. So to do this at scale, where you don't want to spend 2 hours doing a manual review of every customer, automation is the answer for that.
Great. Another question right here is, do you have any tips when you need to collaborate with other departments? So in this case, for instance, we have account management outline. So if you don't have, in a lot of cases, a single platform to manage the customer, and there are many moving parts, like what do you recommend doing? Right.
So there's a couple of ways of managing external dependencies inside your playbook. So one way is to have a service level agreement with the say an implementation team or a support team, where they agree to the playbook and what the handoffs are at each stage where there is a handoff. So we're going to hand off to you after we've done the customer review. You're going to put a project plan together, and that's going to feed into us preparing the new agreement. So you could think of them as having a parallel playbook between stage 3 and 4 in that case. And in the cases where you can't be formal like that with your external dependencies, you can put into the playbooks that explicitly that there's a handoff to the implementation team, and then there's a delivery from the implementation team, and put those as stages in the playbook.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Awesome. We do have one more question specifically about this slide, so maybe we'll answer it now before we move on to the end of the workshop. Would you recommend including some of the insights from the internal review step into the renewal notice?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. If you can do that, I absolutely recommend it. And I recommend it whether it's a low touch or a high touch process. Because, you know, there you get to you get to take accountability for where you didn't deliver everything that you were hoping to deliver, and you get to brag about where you over-delivered or did meet goal, and you get to remind them of why they did this in the first place. And you know, we know internally at Amity we use 40 or 50 different SaaS products, and you know, we're trying to meet our quarterly goals. We're trying to meet our delivery schedule. We're trying to make our customers happy, and you know, sometimes we forget why we use this particular SaaS product, and it's good to step people back and remind them of why. So we always recommend taking as many opportunities as you can to reinforce the value that you produce for your customers, and making, you know, transparency and accountability always make a relationship go better. Always uncomfortable, but always make a relationship stronger. Okay, so we'll start to wrap up. So here is a playbook based on that template implemented in Amity. And so here you can see the different stages. And so you can see that Ford Motor just went into the customer review stage, and that 3M is in the preparing agreement stage, and Aetna is just getting their renewal notice. And here you can see, you know, the health of the customer. You can see that the number of tasks that you need to do at each stage. You can see whether the stage is on time or behind schedule, and you can see how long it actually takes to move people through the renewal process. So, you know, it's a great way of gaining control, of being able to scale, being able to predict, and be proactive in the process, and just to be able to see where you are. Great. I know that we're close to running out of time. So, any more questions?
Sure. I think we're getting a few. I definitely encourage everyone to send us their question right now so we can try to answer a few before we wrap up.
Great.
Do you want to answer a few more questions?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, sounds good. So do you have any recommendations if the point of contact is not the decider on the renewal itself?
Yeah, so yeah, can be a big challenge, and you know, so don't leave it to the end of the renewal period to reestablish your relationship with that point of contact, and definitely involve them in the review process, and don't take their participation for granted. You need to engage them and make it worth their while to participate. And you know, the more that you can keep them participating and engaged throughout the period of the contract, the easier that's going to be.
Cool. Another question here is, how do you decide how long the process should be, and what's a good starting point? Here we had 90 days.
Yeah, so it really depends on a number of factors. So one factor is if your customers are likely going to be doing a competitive review before the renewal, then you don't want to let your competitors have free reign with them, and so you want to start in enough time to reestablish the value that they received, reestablish a new horizon for the relationship, and it's, and start demonstrating your value and your competitive offering, your competitive advantage with them. So, in that sense, you want to give yourself enough time to head off any competitive attacks. And then, how long is the administrative process? So you can think of the second half of the process as being, just logistics, getting contracts and agreements and proposals and meetings arranged, and how many meetings do I need, and what's the length of time between the meetings. So those are things to consider. And also, if you're anything like me, and I suspect you are, you don't like being surprised, and you want to, you like having enough time to think things through, and you don't want to feel like you were rushed or manipulated. So give people time to think. But on the other hand, you don't want to be a burden. You don't want to create more work for them. You certainly don't want to create more thinking than they really have to do. And so you don't want it to be too long.
Awesome. We'll take a couple more questions as we have time, but one great question here is, how often do you recommend checking in on annual accounts to get a temp check in regards to the review? Do you recommend once a quarter, bi-monthly, or just doing it at all?
So it depends on where they are in the life cycle. Obviously, early in the relationship, where getting participation, getting adoption is really a challenge. You probably want to check in with them more often than later. But I certainly would recommend no longer than 90 days. I think, in an annual contract, 90 days is pretty solid. But if the relationship can be volatile and things are changing, and you might check in with them more often. But again, you also don't want to create more work and annoy them. So I think 90 days is a pretty good standard.
Awesome. Why don't we take one more question before we wrap up? Really good one here from Daniel is, our organization and customers are all very different and diverse. So because of this, it's hard to structure a blanket process. Do you have any tips about how to adapt this playbook to make it a little bit more versatile in that case?
Yeah, absolutely. This is the 3-hour conversation. Mm-hmm. But so you can definitely have different playbooks for different size customers. It's not unusual at all for Amity's customers to have a SMB playbook, a mid-size playbook, and an enterprise playbook, because it can be very, very different. Also, you can have playbooks for different industries. So if you sell into different industries, you might need different playbooks for different industries.
Awesome. I think we're out of time, so we're going to wrap up.
Great. Well, thanks everyone for coming out, and really appreciate all of your participation, all of your input. Really makes this a lot more fun and a lot more relevant for more people. So thanks again for coming out. As Mathilde said, we'll send you the deck and the recording in the next 24 hours. And if you'd like to see how playbooks can be deployed and used in your business, just come onto our website and ask for a demo. We'd happy to spend some time with you, learn a little bit about your business, maybe put a playbook together, and then talk through how they can help you get more control over your renewal process. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much, everyone. We'll see you in 2 weeks for our next webinar. Have an awesome day.